Good to see you all over here. I'm going to talk about water management, and that's equally important in soil health, which I guess is the theme of your conference. And I was over here 2 winters ago in the middle of a snowstorm at a water workshop that was in Montrose, and gave a similar talk, but I told the audience there that we were working on an online kind of automated irrigation water scheduling tool that was coming your way, and this was actually, some of this work was partially funded by the Gunnison Roundtable, so it might be of interest to folks over here, and I'm going to give a hopefully live demo of that this morning with some help from Eric. So Eric is going to keep me on time, and to do that, when things get really close to me needing to finish, he's going to say, "Hurry, hurry! Omaha!" So yeah, go Broncos. Excited about that. So the tool I'm going to show you it's a simple water balance scheduling tool. We hope it's relatively simple. It's designed to be flexible. We use weather data from COAGMET, Colorado Agricultural Meteorological Network, which has stations over here. Northern Water, which doesn't have stations over here. Obviously, that's a East Slope thing. NOAA weather data, National Weather Service. And it extracts soil information automatically from NRCS Survey maps, which are essentially your soil survey maps online. And you can set this up via a PC or a tablet, and you can update this versus via a phone app in the future. It's going to have some availability here in 2014, maybe not the full functionality yet. And your account setup is that website right there, egrams.com. So why this might be useful? Improved irrigation water management, including scheduling, meeting the matching the needs of your plant in terms of timing and amount. Connects to soil health. As we showed, every time we irrigated the fields that we manage over there, we lose sediment if it's furrow irrigation. So if you can cut 1 or 2 irrigations out by better scheduling, you're going to keep more soil and nutrients on the field. Manage your salt balance. That can be pretty important on both sides of the hill where we have significant salinity in our water and our soil. And obviously manage soil moisture for any potential precipitation you might have predicted, harvest in terms of forage and alfalfa and things like that, and off-season needs. Incidentally, if you go back to that photo down there on the bottom of the slide, you have some what looks to be fairly stressed corn next to some very well-watered corn. The stressed corn actually we were intentionally stressing just a little bit, but we were tracking the water balance on that really tight. And in the end, we got very similar yields between those 2 crops. In fact, we dropped maybe just 2 bushel with that amount of stress. So if you know what's really going on, rather than just paying attention to the leaf curling of the crop, and know what's in the soil and know what you have left, you can get away with a fair amount less water. Again, other reasons: wind, save time, save labor. A better introduction for me would be Eric's shovel operator on that field. I don't like to work that hard. Balance your scheduling around other work, spraying, cultivating, whatever you need to do. And then the how much, help you know what's in your soil so you can adjust your run times, how much water you're going to apply, considerations like that. And then in your forage systems, if you have a better idea of your soil moisture, you can time your water to minimize compaction and harvest, and know that you're going to have an adequate soil moisture there for regrowth, and also adequate soil moisture going into winter for survival of your perennial crops. So, there's a lot of approaches to doing this, from the simple to the complex, and I guess today I'm going to show a little bit of both. Obviously, if you're on a rotational ditch, or the calendar may dictate your schedule, we have a little bit of that trouble at our research farm. The we have to kind of share water with the other people working up there, and so we have to manage around that, and when we can bring water in. And there's soil-based methods, from going out there and scratching around with your shoe, which my dad is pretty good at, to a shovel or just a simple hand soil probe or even a ball probe, which is actually my preferred way of figuring out how much soil moisture I have in my fields. Using hand feel, I see NRCS has some soil moisture by field brochures back there with some real good color photos. I like those. And there's a wide variety of sensors out there on the market. Many of these are becoming commercially available to where people will even install them for you and upload your data, and you can go look at it online. But it would cost you some money to get that done. Some of the more simple soil probes, watermark sensors shown there, you can outfit a field pretty decently for less than $200. Plant-based approaches, obviously, there's just the visual appearance of your crop. An experienced irrigator might get away with that. I tend to over-irrigate when I do that. The worst time, I always say, to check a field for water stress is late in the afternoon on a hot day, right? Because it might look stressed even though it's not. It's just heat stress. There's a variety of canopy sensors out on the market. I'm not a huge fan of them, but I know they can be valuable in some situations. And then the evapotranspiration estimates of your crop water use. I mentioned weather station data. That's a CoagMet weather station. In that picture right there, it's going to collect 4 important pieces of information for calculating a daily evapotranspiration rate or crop water use rate. It's going to measure your maximum minimum temperature, wind speed, relative humidity, and solar radiation. And with those 4 parameters, we can plug it into a model called the Penman-Monteith combination model. And we come out with a very good calibrated estimate of the evapotranspiration rate of a reference crop. And in Colorado, we use alfalfa as our reference crop. And as the bottom bullet said, a combined approach is always a good approach when you're scheduling irrigation using a wide variety of information. So what's useful information to better manage your water? Obviously, knowing more about your soil, what is your available water holding capacity, what's your profile depth of that soil. The plant, the type, obviously, corn versus alfalfa versus dry beans have dramatically different rooting depths and the growth stage of that crop. And then the crop water use, which you could get from weather station reports, of which there are several weather stations in the valley here of interest. And there's also a physical device that I'm not going to talk about called an anemometer. You can get a physical measurement of that, and obviously your inputs into the system, your irrigation and precipitation amounts. Finally, where can you find evapotranspiration? You can get it from ET tables or charts based upon averages, and I'm showing an average corn ET there. But if you click once, weather's never average in Colorado, right? And that is a realistic ET chart of a growing season. That's an actual ET data from one of our weather stations. These are available on the web. If you want them emailed to you at coagmet.colostate.edu, you can sign up for that. You can also sign up to get them texted to your phone if you were interested in that. In some areas of Colorado, they provide those over the radio and newspaper. So I think that is the background to our irrigation schedule. Now, that's the home page, and Eric's going to take you there live. And a live demo of anything kind of technology is always dangerous, right? So this is the login page, and Eric's going to go ahead and log into an account I already have set up. You have to scroll over on the bottom because the resolution is. There you go. Can you try just zooming out so you get it better?
Here. Say something funny, Troy.
I can't. All the jokes I know are bad. Not suitable for public consumption.
The login's coming.
So Eric's logging in, but this is also where you would set up a new account if you so chose. What we'd like you to do in the other information tab up there is put in your credit card number. And I guarantee you we're not Target. No, just kidding. So in the ERAM system, you can share a lot of information with different people, but the first tab you want to go to is that projects tab right there. And these are a whole bunch of projects that I've set up. And I'm interested in showing you the demo for West Slope. So he's going to click on that. And the way we have this set up is we've already set up a field for you, but we'll show you how you do that. This is a field, zoom out just a little bit to give them a geographic perspective of that, Eric. This probably will start looking familiar to you, since everybody know where that's at now, roughly. Okay. So that's a pivot that I mapped over there. And so there's 4 main features, well 5 really, of this tool, which are represented by these icons up at the top. So over on the left-hand side, that little draw button, that's where, we'll demo this in a second. This is where you actually just map your field. Draw a line around it, and it'll draw your field out for you and shade it, and it'll pull your soil data in for you. So then you know the first thing about one of the big things you need for irrigation water scheduling, right, is your soil information, your soil water holding capacity. So it'll pull that in for you. You can also import your own geographic data. So if some of you have some shape files or some other files from maybe a John Deere GPS system or another company's farm mapping system, you can bring those in. You don't have to go and map them on here if you don't want to, if you have them. The next little icon is kind of where all the action is, the gear information, and I'll go through that. That's where we edit the field, that's where we put in the crop type, and we'll show you this stuff. You can also go over there, and if you want to redraw your field, you can fiddle with the shape. See how it says edit shape. The third piece of icon there is a calendar, and that represents the schedule, and that's going to show you, when we'll show you everything about the irrigation schedule, that it's being calculated for you. The next button is a shovel, which if you click on it, it should show you your soil map. And sometimes Sergo is a little bit slow, and it has to think a little bit, because it has to communicate with Sergo. It's not going to show that. That's fine. Here, go back. That opens those back up. The last little icon is just a zoom to extent, and then that it'll always zoom back to your field. And then finally, there is a trash can if you want to delete that field. The other feature is obviously weather station. So what happens when you map a field is it goes out a chosen radius. I have 20 miles selected there as minimum, but you can go further. And it's going to find the coordinate weather stations in your area. And then based on your local knowledge of those stations, you can say, oh, I want to use these 2 or 1, or in this case, I'm selecting both of those Olathe stations, but we can turn off that second one, Eric. See, he just turned off that site with that on-off button that appears just right off to the right of that station. Now we're just using that Olathe number 2 station, which is right up in the corner of that alfalfa pivot. And if you click on that station itself, our internet speed isn't stellar here, but it's pretty good. It'll pull up yesterday's weather on there. And it looks like that station's having some communication problems, so it's not communicating right now, which often happens in the winter. But it'll show you where it's at. It'll show you where some of the other stations are. If you click those on or off, it'll show you where they're at. So we'll go back to zoom to full extent, and then we're going to talk about how you set up a field. So we're back over to that gear button, and we're going to edit some of the information that went in there. So this was, I was told this was an alfalfa pivot from people that were local, so that's what I called it. But if you do the drop-down menu on crop type, you can see some other crops that we have in the system. Right now, we have these calibrated for alfalfa, corn, and we're on our first year of sugar beets. That right now we feel are our most reliable crops because we field tested this against those. We have field tested crop coefficients on the other crops, but it's not necessarily local coefficients yet. We're still working on those. The two crops of interest that I've been told that are priority that people want to get in the system for over here are sweet corn and onions, and we're going to work on those in the next year. Okay. The planting date, obviously if you choose an annual crop, you do that. The planting date with alfalfa is analogous to green up date, and then an emergency, so an emergence date would just be the same date. There's another little gearbox down to the lower right-hand side, and every time you see another gearbox in these windows, that means that that's a place where you can do advanced information. You can tweak things in the systems, like growing degree days, how many cuttings and when your cutting dates are. You can see there's a pull down up there. Eric, can you drive up there to the cutting dates? You can change your different cutting dates when they are. I'll show you, we'll go back to corn here in a minute. Yeah, different things on so kind of advanced uses that an advanced user might use. Scroll down to that KCR, what that stands for is crop coefficient. So that's where we take the alfalfa reference number that we get from your weather station, and we convert that to actual crop ET. So with alfalfa, that's how it takes, it's just a fraction of that total alfalfa reference to an actual crop ET. And you can adjust that curve if you so choose. So we'll close out of here. So that's things that you enter about your crop. So that's fairly intuitive. Then we come down and we enter information about your irrigation system. So the first thing there is irrigation capacity. If you know your irrigation capacity, either in inches per day or show the other unit systems there, Eric, under capacity. If you know GPM or CFS that you can bring on your farm, or your typical irrigation frequency, you can put that in. Irrigation type, obviously, is important. Show the different types of irrigation systems we have embedded there. Surface sprinkler, center pivot, micro engine irrigation. And then under pivots, we have different types of pivots that you might enter. And what you think your application efficiency is, or it might be a number you get from your NRCS folks if they've come out and done an assessment on your irrigation. They may tell you, well, we think you're a little bit higher, a little bit lower than the typical irrigation efficiency you have. And then we can tweak our soil moisture information. If you know at planting or at green up date what your soil moisture deficit is, you can enter it there, or you can leave it blank, assuming that because it's going to assume that you start at field capacity. And then it mapped the soil type it found there, and it put in inches, the available water capacity of that soil in inches per inch. Over to the right, if you know you have a better number from another source, you can change that value. So that's where you can tweak your soil information. So let's close that out. Okay, so the other big tool of this, obviously, and the thing that we're most interested in is our actual irrigation schedule. And if you click on the calendar, that's where it takes you. So the first thing you get is this pretty simple summary. Will that window pull down, Nick?
No, but I know it's
Okay. Well, the first tab on this says summary, And so what you'll see over there to the right is simply just a bucket that it's estimating your soil moisture to be. And when that, up at the top, that FC stands for field capacity, and the bottom of that bucket is permanent wilting point. And then the inches over to the right are the total inches of water that that root zone would hold, given your soil type and the crop that you selected. And then the MADs is your management allowable depletion. And you can actually tweak that, but we have that set for most crops as 50% of your available water holding capacity of your crop. So 50% of your field capacity minus wilting point. And that one might look like it's been tweaked. But it's going to give you 3 pieces of information at this tab. The first one is how much water you used since the last time you entered into irrigation. That in this scenario, it's 0.3 inches. What it is showing you, because this is actually live, is the soil moisture condition at maturity for this particular field, or the last, what we said is the last cutting anyways, because since it's alfalfa. It tells you how much water you're below your field capacity, your total water holding capacity, and in this case, it's about 6 inches. And then how much water is available until you reach management allowable depletion, which is when you start to undergo a little bit of stress with your crop. So that's just a kind of a simple overview. And from this overview, if you want to, you can export this information. And this, down at the bottom there, Eric, is particularly helpful if, for example, you are on an irrigation water management plan with NRCS, like on an EQIP project. You can get a total year summary, do the print option there. At the end of the season, with your complete water balance information. Right there. And it's looking for a printer, you can just tell it no. But in this situation, it gives you that top summary information, and what I'm going to show you is the table of all your crop water use, your crop progress, and your irrigations that you may have entered into the system all in one place. And you can also export that into an Excel file if you're into keeping records in Excel. So I think you'll all have to alt tab back over there, Eric. There we go. No. Next tab over. There you go. It's always fun driving somebody else's computer. So there's 3 tabs up there. The next tab is where the heart of the data is, and this is just your checkbook of your soil water bank account, is essentially what this is. So we have a date in the first column. We have a crop progress, and this is just a % of crop progress. The next thing it tracks is your growing degree days for the season. That is your daily crop ET in inches of water per day. Your gross irrigation, so the grayed out columns are something you can edit. So you will put in your gross irrigation amount, and since you also entered your application irrigation efficiency, it'll calculate a net irrigation amount for you automatically. So that's an editable one. If you click in that cell, if you double click in that cell, you can change irrigation. And I have no idea when this bird's irrigated. I just put in a bunch of numbers so we could have something to talk about. It's going to take that data and it's thinking about how it's going to change it. The next column is rainfall. And this is obviously an editable column because it's going to take the rainfall from the weather station you chose, and you might be across the road or you might be 10 miles away, and there's 99% chance that your rainfall at your field is not what it is at the weather station, so we encourage you to change that number for what you have. Because really one of the most valuable tools for irrigation scheduling is a good rain gauge. The next column is the effective amount of water that went into the soil, either from your irrigation or your rainfall. There's an algorithm in there if you get a really hard rain, and we have calculated algorithms that will calculate how much precipitation efficiency actually goes in. It won't credit all that hard rain actually to your soil water balance. The next column is your soil water deficit from field capacity, so that's a negative number. And the last column is observed soil water moisture deficit in a % of field capacity. So if you go out to your field and use either hand soil method or a watermark sensor or something like that, and you say, oh, well, I think I'm at 30% depleted, and this thing says I'm at 45, you can change that number here. So that is where your field check, either walk in the field or sensors or whatever you like to do, becomes valuable to make this information more relevant to you. So in the system, we have taken all this information, and in the next tab that says graph, we plot it all out for you. And there's 2 lines on this column. Now I'll show you one in corn. Now, alfalfa one, these 2 lines are parallel because the leaf zone doesn't change through the year. But your top line is your field capacity, and the bottom line there is your maximum allowable depletion. And so we're going to try to irrigate to keep, and the red line is your soil moisture, so we're going to try to irrigate to keep that red line between those 2 lines. And those little bars on the bottom of the graph are precipitation and irrigation events during the season. So you can look at this. I have this as plant available water, but up on the right-hand side of that window where it says select graph, you can change that to water deficit if you like to think about this in a negative term. So it's whether your soil water is going down or whether it's going up. It depends on your preference. Those little 3 bars underneath that graph, you can export that graph if you want to as a JPEG or a PNG or something, if you need to put it in a report or something like that, or print it out for a client, something like that. Am I missing anything else on the plot, Eric? I'll show you one for corn in a minute so you can kind of see how they vary with a different plot. So let's say okay with that. And that's the plotting capabilities of this tool. So I think what we'll do now, I have about, so you might want some time in between me and the next speaker, about 5 more minutes, but let's do a new field, Eric. So let's go back to projects.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Well, we can do a new field in here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Want me to move over?
Maybe zoom out just a hair and find another field. So Eric's going to draw just a square out around this field adjacent to it. So he just clicks on each one of those corners. That's what he's doing. And then on the last corner, you'll double click, and then that completes the polygon, and it knows where to stop. And then you give it a name. And it's running and looking for soil at the NRCS database. And this is probably the slowest feature in this tool, because it has to communicate with somebody else. It should be showing a map, right?
No, it doesn't show soils map unless you...
Oh, okay, you have to click on that too. I'm sorry. So if we did corn, click on the little advanced feature. And then show them the crop coefficient. I just wanted to point out, as your corn advances over on the left-hand side of the graph, that's planting, and then that first little dot is emergence, and then that line up to where it becomes horizontal, that's your crop progress as it reaches full canopy. So it will adjust your development of that canopy based upon the growing degree days, the heat units that it's measuring from the weather station. So this isn't just a set amount, that growing transition. That's actually done live based on heat units of your nearest weather station. So if you get in a cold period, and and that corn is just sitting there, that slope will be different because your canopy isn't developing as fast, or if you get a warm period, it's going to develop faster. So I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead and say done with that. I guess just for kicks, go ahead and close that out. Let's hit the soil button and see if that soil varies very much from the. It says it's that same Charlotte clay loam. Is that how you pronounce it? And most of that field is that way. There's a little bit of mesa way down in the corner. It selects the most prominent or the dominant soil that you have in your field. We're going to adjust this feature to if you have a field with a lot of different soil types in it, you can choose which one by clicking on it that you wanted to use to schedule. Because maybe you want to schedule based on your soil water holding capacity that's the lowest to make sure that you're getting adequate water to your crops. So it's something that's adjustable. So the last thing I'm going to do real quick on this, Eric, is you want to go to your account for the Kerbal Conservation Tillage Field. Eric's going to bounce into another account and show you our irrigation schedule for the field, the data that we pulled off of that we were managing. Is there any questions while he's pulling that up? Yes?
It looks simple now. Well,
It's always simple when somebody else is driving that's done it 100 times, right?
where do you get help with this?
Call Eric.
I don't know why
No, we're working on an FAQ and a simple manual. We're also working on some little videos that will come along with this that track like mouse movement on the screen while somebody's talking. And it'll say to do this, go, click here and do that. And then you can always email us or call us to get some help directly. Yes, sir.
What is your site here?
Yeah,
What is
that's
the
okay.
website?
What is the website?
www.erams.com is the base website for it. And you'll have to start an account there, and then you'll start a new project. And when you start a new project, there'll be a pull-down list of a lot of different projects that ERAMS actually does. It actually does a whole bunch of other things. You can run Russell on this. You can do a whole bunch of other stuff. But you want to choose irrigation. And we have like a one-page tip sheet that runs through those, and I should have printed that out. So it kind of says, do here, go there, do here, go there. But I can send that to anybody that wants that. Or we can make that available. Are we close? There we go. There's our Kerbal field where we do our conservation tillage. What?
Is that where you wanted to go?
Yes. The final part of this is I mentioned a mobile app, and I do have some screens on that. We do know that people don't farm from their computer, you farm from your pickup truck. So we're coming up with a mobile application. You can get this. You still have to set it up on here or a tablet or a PC. But if you want to retrieve, well, I guess you can set it up on your phone if you have a smartphone, but it's kind of hard. I can't see that small to draw maps and stuff. But go to the schedule, Eric. I just wanted to show the graph and how it differs for an annual crop versus a perennial crop. But say you're in the field and you're looking at your field and says, this looks like it should be stressed, but it's not. You can retrieve your soil water moisture balance and some weather data. Maybe you wanted to know if it rained across the county and you wanted to look at the weather station. You just pull your phone out and get it. So this is a field we manage up at RDEC. And again, you can see how your available water holding capacity, where that line was horizontal with the alfalfa, right? Because that's a perennial crop with a set root zone. It's going up with time as your root zone is developing, right? So there's an algorithm in there that computes your rooting depth through the growing season. Now your maximum rooting depth that it uses to schedule, you can set that. So if you have a field and you know, I have a real shallow soil in this field and it's only 30 inches deep and this thing's saying I have a 42-inch root zone, you just put that. You say, no, this soil is shallower. I don't get much water below 10 feet, or you have a compaction layer or something like that. You can modify that. But here's the situation. Again, here's our plant available water in red. We are trying to manage that so that line stays in between the two blue lines. You can see we got a little dry there in in June before we did the first irrigation. We irrigate a little bit more because this isn't a pivot, this is a furrow irrigated field. Those purple bars are irrigation amounts, and you can see the soil moisture going up and down, and when we were getting close to our maximum allowed depletion, we tried to irrigate if we had water available or it was our turn for water. You can see we got pretty good dry below as we started to mature in September, and then several big heavy rains in September, also known as the flood over there. Which, by the way, really complicated getting our silage out this year when it was sopping wet, and it's caused some serious compaction on that field. So we're not entirely sure what we're going to do with it. So yeah, going back to my slides, which I had just in case I wasn't able to show this live. So this is the kind of the login for the app. I can't show it to you on my phone, so my grad student took pictures of it. This is the login of the app. This is that bucket, kind of your simple summary that we envision people could have. Same kind of information, how much water is available in your soil. And then there's a button there for add irrigation precip or check yesterday's weather. This is adding irrigation. You can either add irrigation or precip, or if you want to modify your ET. If you want to calculate how much you put on, you can enter either a CFS or a GPM. You can enter the hours you irrigate, your acreage, and it's going to crunch that number for you. This is just what the weather screens kind of look like or might look like. Kind of made them red or green based on if it's hot or cool, and you can get your daily ET and your temps and stuff like that. And so that's the mobile phone app, and that isn't going to be available in 2014. Finally, I wanted to let you know that this looks all hocus pocus when it's in a computer, but we actually field validate this stuff. We have 6 years of corn, 4 years of alfalfa, and 4 site years of sugar beets. One of the fields is a speaker this afternoon. We instrument the fields really heavily. The alfalfa comes from an actual weighing lysimeter. On these fields, we take some very intensive measurements. We pretty much instrument the field or a part of the field about as intensely as you can to calculate the soil water balance. And we check the crop growth stage and development, things like leaf area index, so that our tool is predicting what it says it should, and if it doesn't, then we modify the algorithms or the crop coefficients to fit what we actually see in the field. And I'd like to do some of that over here and get a little bit of more money or a local cooperator with some crops of interest. This is an actual field validation graph. I know there's a lot of dots and junk up here. It's a very busy graph. It's the same type of graph as we were looking at before, where that red line is your maximum allowable depletion. This is a cornfield near Greeley. The blue line is your soil moisture deficit. Those dots are either irrigations or precipitations, and those black lines are actual measurements, and the blue lines are what the tool predicted. And it's relatively close. Of course, this is data that we use to modify what it was actually predicting. Those are millimeters of water, so something, if 5 millimeters isn't very much, those dots look further apart than they should be if we did those in inches. That's from David Gleason's thesis, the grad student that worked on that web, and Steve from Montrose. So that's our demo, and obviously you don't do this without money. NRCS, CIG grants, and conservation innovation grants, Colorado Water Conservation Board and the Gunnison Roundtable funded some of this work, and those are our grad students who do the real work. And there's my contact information. Dr. Alan Indalis is kind of the irrigation guy in our department. Well, he is the irrigation guy in our department. He's pretty much the brains behind all this. I'm just the outreach guy. Like I said, I'm the shuttle operator. That's it.
Any questions? Here, I'll give you the mic. On your weather stations where you select multiple weather stations to track, does it do an average of all those data points?
It'll do an inverse distance weighting average of those if you select multiple stations based on your distance to the station of the raw weather data.
Yeah, wait a second.
Not sure it'll do that with precipitation, though. It probably does, but I always encourage people to put their own precipitation in, because, you know, it can rain. Rain can be different across the street, right? I encourage people just to, once you maybe map those weather stations and you go, oh, I know where that is, maybe go and do a drive-by at the station if you think it's a good location for a station. I didn't mention, but some of those stations have a little blue dot by them. That means that we think they're pretty good for irrigation scheduling because they're close and surrounded by irrigated agriculture. If they have a brown dot by them or yellow, they're okay and that they're partially irrigated. And there's another darker color. Do you know what it is, Eric? For stations that are in a dryland location. If they're dryland, we don't necessarily recommend it. Most of them around here should be either fully irrigated or partially irrigated. I don't think they cited any of those in a real dry location. Yes, sir?
So you will actually store our data on your servers, I mean, it sits out there as long as we need it?
Yeah. The question was, you'll actually store the data on a server. Actually, it's in the cloud somewhere, but we know where the servers are, or who we're contracting with for the cloud. It's not a server at CSU. And yes, so there isn't any, you don't have to enter like the ET and stuff like that. It draws all that data in.
But my real concern was, not having somebody delete it, because I can see it'd be a lot of work, a lot of time to put that data in there. So by having an account, you hold that data for us.
Yes, sir.
Holding the data in the cloud.
Yeah, if you have an account, we hold the data for you. If you wanted to download it to have it on your own machine, you could, download a summary at the end of the year, like in Excel or something like that. What we are kind of working on, we don't have it perfected just yet, is how we'll do year-to-year transitions on fields. Like you said, once you map a field, you won't have to come in back next year and remap it, right? That would be a pain in the butt. So we're kind of working on how you can, right now you can rename that field, like that field, I think I call it 2013 alfalfa. Well, you may want to come back in next year and call it 2013 alfalfa. But I guess I didn't show it. There is, he already has that in where you, does he have that in where you set, when you set a new planting date, is that right, Eric? The little box is going to pop up. Like if you set in next year's planting date, a little box is going to pop up and say, do you really want to do this? And because that means you're transitioning to a new season, and you'll say yes, it will archive your old year, but from what you'll see on the screen, it'll now be blank. So it'll kind of say, oh, you're setting a new, you're trying to move forward in time. What do you want us to do? But we are kind of, that's one thing we haven't perfected yet, is how we do that kind of transitions from year to year. In terms of security, it's as secure as anything else on the web that's password protected. Our programmers are pretty good. They didn't work on the healthcare website at the federal government. They're pretty sharp guys, but any system can be hacked. I mean, if they can hack NSA, they can hack us. So, it's as secure as anything else that's password protected.
One more question here. Hold on, Rob.
You said in the summary, that there's a summary thing you can download. Will it sum up your total irrigation for that pivot for the season, as well as precipitation, so you can get a quick look and see what your total water usage was for that year?
Does it do that, Eric, in that summary? Total irrigation applied and total precipitation for a field. Is that in the summary?
Well, the data's there.
The data's there, but I don't think it does sum up, but that's a good idea that maybe that should be in the summary. Like I said, this is kind of a beta version, so this is good input, thank you. Maybe write that down. Or we'll make sure, is that, I assume that's something you'd like to have. Okay.
So maybe a little further than beta testing with Keith's cover crop tool or cover crop spreadsheet. We're providing some feedback on that. That's good. Good comment on the summary. Any other questions? One more?
What about water coming through a head gate? I mean, is it realistic to use this if you're running ditch water?
Is it realistic to use this if you're running ditch water through a head gate? Your application amounts are only as good as your confidence in your water measurement device on your field. And whether your ditch water or your ditch rider, if you're confident in the amount of water you order is delivered. There's a lot of different ways to estimate water flowing through a ditch. If you have a defined channel, you can usually work with your NRCS local guys to figure out how much water is going there. I'm not as familiar with west slope ditch system as I am east slope ditch systems. Some head gates, we have pretty good partial flumes, and some of them, we got 2 boards and we think, But I usually back, when I'm doing surface irrigation, I often back calculate how much water I'm going off the field just by measuring how much I have coming off of each siphon tube, doing a bucket and a stopwatch time off that siphon tube, getting gallon per minute, multiply it by the number I'm setting out there, and there's your flow. But yeah, it's only as accurate as your water measurement.
Thank you, Eric and Troy, for excellent presentations. Let's give them a round of applause.